Oh my God. Holy shit.
Okay. What?
Dude,
What?
I just got an email. Brazil tickets are live.
Oh shit!
Oh my God, this is happening. Hold on. Formula
Do it.
One.
Do it. We're doing it live.
Oh, dude. I might have to put this podcast on pause for a moment.
Or we'll just do it live for all the fans to see.
You cool with this one?
Where's G at? I don't care. Do it.
On the back straight.
Just gonna send it. And live on the podcast, Kurt's credit card bounces.
Woo!
Was it Brazil where the Mercedes team got held at gunpoint and robbed?
Yep, it was. It was
cool.
Brazil.
Yeah, just want to make sure.
Maybe you should still buy that gun. We just got to get it down there. Yes!
Are we
Yes!
in?
Yes!
Oh shit!
Yes!
We're going to Brazil.
We're going to Brazil, baby. Oh my God. That was
Hell yeah.
so stressful. Dude, that's awesome. I can't believe how cheap those tickets were.
Yeah, I'm quite happy at $250.
All right. Oh, got to get back in the zone now. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Formula America podcast with your hosts, Kurt and Dylan. And today we're back with a special episode on the 2023 car launches. You know, we've gone through all of them now. Well, with the exception of Alpine, but we've already seen, we've seen the leaked pictures of the Alpine car, so we know what that one looks like. So we're going to basically just talk about all of the car launches, the good, the bad. Some of them were okay. Some of them were just terrible. But first, before we do that, Dylan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Hey, Siri. How many days until March 5th?
Oh, she's letting you down.
Siri doesn't want to talk, but it is 17 days until lights out in Bahrain. Dude, we are just over 2 weeks away. I can't believe it.
We got testing next weekend.
I know. It's been, well, I remember it was like 100 and something days. It feels like yesterday. And like, how are we going to make it through? And now we're here. We've actually got to see a car on track too for the, I don't know if you saw the Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Oh man. But so I think the big like overarching theme for this season is basically just that, what's that, the AC/DC song Back in Black. Like everybody, not just the Mercedes, but all of the cars they've got this dark theme to their paint. I'm looking at the pictures of all of them now. The Aston Martin is probably the most painted car.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's got a good bit. Yeah. That's wild, but I like it.
I did too. I mean, Ferrari's classic Ferrari red the whole way through, and Red Bull did. I mean, Red Bull's just kind of a dark car in general, but Mercedes brought black back, which is such a good looking car. I know they're the silver arrows, but beautiful. Man, that car black is gorgeous. I like the Duracell battery on top of the Williams.
Oh yeah.
That one's pretty kind of funny. AlphaTauri's not too dark. They're still pretty white. Ton of unpainted carbon fiber on the McLaren. We'll get through all of it. We'll talk through them.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing is like when you actually get on get to a track and you see these cars, you get to see like looking at the pictures, it just looks like black or, you know, it looks like whatever. But then when you actually see the cars and you see all the exposed carbon, which looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
or just like some of the intricacies that you don't really get to see. Not at all. Some of these cars the paint is just stunning.
Like, and it's not, we always talk about it. The Red Bull looks like a good looking car, good looking paint job. And then you see it in color or in person and you're like, holy shit. Like the way that the Bull on top pops, like, man, that's a good looking car. I know you love the Aston Martin too. It's not my favorite green, but
I think it's beautiful, especially in the sun. All right. So with these, I would say there was a range of different vibes, I guess, to all these car launches. And to me, it's getting to the point where, you know, the idea behind a car launch, I think in theory is like, hey, this is going to be our new car for the next year. But, you know, unfortunately, a lot of these, it's just like a repainted car from the previous year. Yeah. And it's kind of confusing what the point of the car launches is. Or like, is it to just build up hype for the season, you know, because that's fine if you want to do that. Or is it to launch the new car? Because not too many people are doing that. Like Red Bull, for instance. Red Bull made this huge build up for their launch event. Like they build it to be like it's in New York City. It's gonna be a star-studded event. It was like this huge gala, whatever. And then the launch started, and we already had the podcast on that, and it was absolute trash. It was a mess. It
Horrible.
was chaos. It was all over the place. They had all these people doing interviews who weren't anywhere near the F1 world. Like they were snowboarders and skaters, which is cool. It's part of the Red Bull athlete program or whatever. But they didn't, that's not what we tuned in for. I didn't want to watch 45 to 50 minutes of nonsense. And then they get, the one presenter, her earring kept hitting the microphone, so eventually they had to tell her to take that off. And then you had the Dollar Tree Matthew McConaughey who was there, and it was just chaos all over the place. And then finally
the Ford commercial.
Yeah, and then they released the car. They unveiled the car, which, surprise, surprise, the same car that they've released for the past however many years. And then it's like, oh, here's why we're here, because this is a Ford commercial. And it's like, oh, Ford's welcome Ford back to the F1 community, which is the worst kept secret ever, because it leaked well before then. Formula One even posted it before the launch that Ford was coming back. And it was just chaos, and it was very underwhelming. And then after that, I was like,
it was horrible.
It was frustrating. And I was like, I don't want to watch anymore. Like, I hope this isn't part of their yearly budget, and this is why they're breaking the budget cap, because they're spending all their money on this crap. But it was trash. And then the next one I watched was the Ferrari launch. And the Ferrari launch, in my opinion, is how a launch should be done. This was awesome. It was at Maranello. They had the Ferrari fans, like a couple hundred people in the grandstand. And it, like, you could feel the energy. You always hear about the Tifosi and all that, and you could feel it. They were energetic. They had some, electronic music playing. I love electronic music. They had a couple presenters that were there, and then they did interviews with the new team principal, Fred Vasseur, and then the two drivers, and that was kind of it. And then out of nowhere, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to drive the car today. And so next thing you know, Charles Leclerc is pulling the car out, and he's on the track, and you got to see the actual car. You got to hear the actual car, and we finally got to see an F1 car, a 2023 car on the track, and it was awesome. The energy and everything, I loved it. I think probably Ferrari was my favorite one of all the car launches.
Ferrari was great.
I think it's, what's up?
I said Ferrari was great, and it looks like, I don't know if this is their true 23 car, but it definitely had some updates. It wasn't the 22 car.
Yep,
and
for sure.
Kind of like you were saying, who knows with these car launches of today, if you're getting a 22 or a 23 car, or like last year, Mercedes launched a total dummy car that was completely fake. And so you never know, but there's definitely updates on this one. And so it's really cool getting to see it out on the track. And it was just a great classy launch. It was everything it's almost better to be a boring, bland launch than be what Red Bull did.
Right. And then, all right, so thinking about the whole Red Bull fiasco, I was like, this AlphaTauri one, probably going to be more of the same. And I don't know, did you actually watch the AlphaTauri one?
No, I did not.
Dude, it was legitimately 3 minutes long. It took me a while to find it, because I kept seeing this like 3-minute clip on YouTube, and I was like, oh, that's not it. That's not it. And then come to find out, that was the actual launch. They had a couple models in the AlphaTauri clothes in the background, and then they just like unveiled the car, and it went to black. That was it. It was awesome.
Not a bad way to go about it.
Exactly, right? And it's like quick, down and dirty. I don't have much to talk about, right? I can't sit here and bash it like I did the Red Bull one. Maybe they spent all their money on the Red Bull launch, and then they're like, screw this. We'll just put it out there.
They're like, we're going to be in last place anyway, battling it out with Williams. So whatever. Here's the car. See you next year.
So that one was a cool one, I thought, just because of how short it was.
Alfa Romeo's was good. I like the Alfa Romeo launch with, backwoods mullet, Bottas walking around and looking fly, and it's a good looking car, man.
I will say I've never been a Bottas fan, but I am enjoying the new Bottas vibe. Like, it is a complete vibe, and I love it.
It totally is. But this is a 2023 car. This is straight up updates. Like, I believe the Alfa Romeo, that is their 23 car. It's got a ton of updates. Front wing, side pods, the rear of it, like the air intake, roll hoop at the top. Like, this car looks awesome.
Oh, it's in with the livery, it's beautiful. In my
Yeah,
opinion, it's one of the better looking cars this year.
it is. I generally
I've seen
don't
a lot
like
of
the Alfa
people.
Romeo.
No, not at all. And then I've seen a lot of people saying it looks like a Red Bull and a Ferrari had a baby. But I mean, if you're gonna copy, then look at what who did that? Not Force India. What'd they become after that?
Force
The
India
Alpine
was
car,
Racing Point.
Racing Point. Right? Remember when they came out with the pink Mercedes? Was that
Hmm.
last year?
No, that was
And 2 years
2, 3
ago.
years ago.
And
That
it
was when
was
Checo was still
competitive at
driving.
first, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, imitation's the best form of flattery, right?
yeah. And I think Alfa Romeo, it'll be really interesting. I'm excited to see that car out there because I know that's the 23 car. It's got
Yeah.
some big updates.
Yeah, I think they've got a chance to definitely be a solid, like top of the midfield team this year.
Yeah, they really do. They got decent driver for it too. McLaren, I cut you off. You were going for the McLaren next. Go ahead.
McLaren. So I actually kind of like the McLaren one, and just because I thought it had some pretty cool, like hype pieces. They had little sizzle reel, whatever you want to call it, where the bunch of like old Bruce McLaren footage, and they really leaned into like the heritage and the history behind the brand. You know, it's the new year, or I'm sorry, the 60th anniversary, so they're not doing the MCL whatever naming convention. I think it's the what's the MC60 or the MCL 60 this year.
It's the MCL
Um,
60 after the 60th year.
Right. So they kind of changed all that up. They're really diving into the heritage this year. And the car itself, I mean, I like it. I'm digging all the black on the cars. I love
Yep.
exposed carbon. I think it looks beautiful. But to me that was cool. I just like how they had all of the montages.
Yeah.
Um, Other than
And the
that, it was kind of like standard, no frills, no fluff really. Couple montages and then announce the car.
and the car looks good. I mean, they definitely took a ton of inspiration from Red Bull. Those side pods are very Red Bull esque. It looks like a modified Red Bull, which, like you said, flattery. It looks good.
Yeah.
Definitely a different car. So I'm hoping it performs better this year.
And I'm really, really excited to see what they do this year. I think that, with Lando and Oscar,
Mhm.
both driving that car, I think that as long as they have a good car, and this is actually a good performing car, I think McLaren has a solid chance to be, close to number 4, fighting for that 4th spot in
Yeah,
the constructors this year,
I totally
especially
agree.
with,
And
with Oscar.
yeah, I think they've got a good duo, and we saw with Mercedes last year. You don't have to have the best car to have good strategy and be consistent in that car, and you can score good points and place pretty high. And I think McLaren has the opportunity, with the new team principal, with the modified car, with that driving duo, to be the top of the midfield. They just need to work on that consistency.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think, he was super consistent last year, so
Yeah,
as long as Oscar gets into that car and figures it out quickly, I think they'll be fine.
I
They
totally agree.
just need that second driver to be scoring points.
Danny.
Oh, sad Danny. Well,
Uh,
again, I got my Danny shirt on, so still repping the brand.
all right, we got the Green Bull
Let's
up
see who was
next.
next.
I'm sorry, not the Green Bull,
Let-
the Aston Martin.
The Aston Martin. I don't know what it is about Lawrence Stroll. I I think it's just his face. I don't like his face.
You got RBF. You got hardcore RBF.
he he for sure, man. Like, and so they were leaning real heavy on like, hey, we know that it takes time to build up, and they were showing like, hey, we've got a 5-year plan. Like, and they kept laying it out. So each year they're gonna make, be a little bit better, and then 5 years they're gonna be fighting for a title, which I think is an exciting prospect. Just when you look at all of the money and research and all the advancements they're making with their factory,
Hmm.
you know, I think that this is solid. There's a chance that that could happen. I just don't like Lawrence Stroll. I don't know what it is. He just seems like the villain from from all of these movies, just like the billionaire villain. But
Yes and no.
maybe
I,
it's
I like that Lawrence Stroll is in the weeds. He's actively the CEO. It's not like Gene Haas, who has the money but doesn't, want to put it in. Lawrence Stroll is putting his
true.
dollars there. He's rebuilding factories. He's bringing the right people in. Like, he's, to me, it's not that he's the villain He is the like hardcore no frill CEO. Like, here's our 5-year plan, and I will
True.
pull us there by any way necessary because he believes in it. And I like him a lot for that. He has no personality. He reminds me of like a Bill Belichick, right? No personality to speak of on the mic, but you almost kind of like him for that. I remember Bill Belichick, and after a loss, they were like, what do you need to do next week to recover from this? And he was like, score more points. It's like, oh, yeah, there
Very
you go.
Kimmy-esque.
Yeah, very Kimmy-esque. And I feel like Lawrence Stroll is the same way. I just wish he wouldn't, baby his son so much. But that's another conversation.
Right.
But I like
Look,
him.
yeah, professionally he's awesome. My beef is it's all personal.
Yeah, that's fair.
But other than that, I enjoy what he's doing. I like what he's doing. He took up a big part of the launch when they interviewed him. And so one of my notes is like Lawrence Stroll. And then the other thing, one of my only other note from this one was I never realized how small Fernando Alonso is.
Yeah.
But when he's standing next to Lance Stroll, like he looked like like somebody just like shrunk him down a little bit. Either
He's
Lance
only like
Stroll
5'6" or 5'7". He is not tall.
Okay, that makes sense then. And I'm sure Lance Stroll is probably like 5'11",
Yeah,
pushing
he's
6
something
foot.
around there.
Because I just see him next to each other. I'm like, he looks like a child, an old child.
Fernando is small.
Yeah. But
he's also from the time pre-ballast in the driver's seat, though. Back, it's kind of like horse jockeys, where the weight of the jockey actually makes a big difference. So horse jockeys are always so small. Like early 2000s, man, like the driver weight was a big deal because that was, pounds of difference in those cars. Now they do the ballasts in there, so it's not too big of a deal. So you can have a 6'3", George Russell
or Albon.
Mm-hmm. But the Aston Martin at the same time, I think this was their 23 car. It's got a heavily modified front wing from last year. The engine cover's different. Like I think this is their 23 car and the livery for it.
Yeah, and honestly, it's so close now. Like, what does it matter? I mean, all the cars, like, they should be built already. You're not going to copy somebody's design right away, and you're going to see it next week anyways.
You got testing next week, so I think this is their 23 car.
All right, so on to George Russell. Speaking of that, the Mercedes launch. I actually thought the Mercedes launch was kind of cool. At the beginning, they did like this like behind the scenes in the green room, kind of like showing George Russell and Lewis Hamilton and Schumacher and
Toto
Wolff and all that. And it was cool to see like how they get prepared for stuff like that. And then they're talking about the shoes, and he's like, "Oh, Lewis is like, oh, those are nice loafers." He's like, "I got them from you." And then
who they are?
Like, "Those are
yours."
Yeah. And Lewis is like, "They look expensive," and he's like, "Well, we on camera." Like, you can see his head. Like, I want to know how much those damn shoes cost now.
Yeah,
where they're embarrassed to say on TV.
But the car looks great.
Oh my God, my favorite car on the grid this year is that black Mercedes. I love the color combo. It's so nice. We all loved the black Mercedes of 2 years ago, and now it's even better, new and improved. I can't wait to see it in person in Brazil.
And they kept the zero pods, which I assumed for the launch they were going to keep the zero pods. It'll be interesting when testing rolls around if they still actually have the zero pods, or if they're going to, which I think they will. I think they're going to roll with the punches and keep the zero pods. I can see the advantage of it if they can sort the car out. But man, this car looks good, and this is different than the 2022 car. Zero pods are a different shape. Like I think if I say I don't know, but I think this might be their 2023 car, or they could throw a total curveball and bring out a car that looks identical to Red Bull's next week. Who knows? Mercedes would do something like that. They do it every year, but. The car looks great, and it's definitely not the 22 car.
Nice. And
the other thing I saw that I really like about Mercedes is that, last year Lewis's car had all the highlighter around it. The 44 was highlighted, the wheel wells are highlighted, all that good stuff. They still have that this year, but then they showed a reel of George Russell's car, and George's is that like AMG Mercedes blue. for
Yep.
his numbers and all of that. It makes it so easy to pick the cars apart on the track.
Oh my
Usually you're
gosh,
looking for the
yeah.
highlighter on the top. You're like, is that Checo? Is that Max? Is that Sergio? Or not Sergio, is that Sainz? Like, I don't know who this is driving. Like, but you have no doubt when the Mercedes comes around who's who, and they made it even easier by changing George Russell's numbers as color as well. So I like that a ton. I wish more teams would do that.
Yeah, I think that's a big American thing too, right? You're used to like NASCAR where number is like front and center, both doors, on the hood, on the roof, all over the place. You can't miss it. But with
And
these
the car's
cars, it's
painted
like
like an M&M.
exactly, yeah, right. And with these, it's like they're so fast and the number is so small on these cars. It's like I don't know who they are, so you got to pick it out by the helmet or the highlighter color on top of the air intake, or
Mhm.
the Mercedes, like you said, which was so easy last year because you'd see it right away. Oh, here comes Lewis.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome.
Um,
And then I did like during the launch how they were interviewing one of the engineers, and like, all right, the question everybody wants to know is it going to bounce? And he was just like, he was like, we don't think so. He was like, we'll see, but we hope not. And I was like, that's a pretty honest answer. I'm
Yeah.
sure they didn't expect it to bounce last year either.
You know,
But
one of
I think they figured it out. I would bet they did.
I think one thing that Mercedes does so well is not pointing a whole lot of fingers around the room. Well, George Russell doesn't. George Russell does a horrible job of that. He points fingers at everybody. But Mercedes, I'll never forget. It was 3 years ago when 3 years ago, because Max wasn't in the title shootout. And Christian Horner was pointing fingers at Toto left, right, and center, and blaming people. And Toto did like an interview, and he was like, "I think people need to start looking at their own cars and stop pointing fingers and just take responsibility for their actions." It was like, "Ooh, man, shots fired." But Mercedes does that. Mercedes is like, "Hey, we screwed up. The car bounced a lot. Is it going to bounce this year? I don't know." They're not over there like, "Yeah, well, it bounced, but it's faster than this car." Like Christian Horner would do something like that. I
Yeah,
like
right.
the class of Mercedes where you're like, "That's an honest answer. I hope it doesn't bounce." Like,
Yeah,
touche.
exactly.
We hope so too.
I've found myself becoming more and more of a Mercedes fan as
Yeah.
of late, and I think it's seeing them take a step back last year and seeing how they fought back and the work ethic that they have, like that goes a long way with me. I respect all of that, and
Mhm.
even with Lewis Hamilton, seeing how humble he was and everything, they're quickly becoming one of my favorite teams.
Yeah, it's hard not to love him for that. Like you can't really bash him for having the best car on the track, or Lewis Hamilton and all the mud that used to be slung. Like they had one of the worst ones, and they're still same old Mercedes. It's hard not to love him for it.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of Mercedes, Williams.
Williams, exactly. That's what I was going next. So this launch was another one that was, it was all right. It wasn't Red Bull, and it also wasn't Ferrari. It was a good, decent launch, I guess. They did a lot of interviews with Jamie Chadwick, who I didn't know is actually racing in basically the feeder series for IndyCar this year.
Interesting.
So she'll be doing that. I think she's still potentially maybe still doing Formula W. I'm not sure. But then they also interviewed Logan and Alex. And it's cool to finally hear an American accent on there. And that was awesome, and kind of see his story and like how his family moved to Europe just so he can, pursue his racing and all. And I know there's a lot of, people saying like, hey, there's other drivers that were better than him that should have got the chance ahead of him. So I just really hope that he does well this year. I just hope he doesn't shit the bed. That's all we can kind of hope for at this point. But yeah, I'm excited to see an American driver, and excited to see, how he does this year and how he compares and stacks up next to Albon.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna be one of the hard parts. Is Williams as a whole has kind of shit the bed the past couple of years, just not having a good car at all. And so
Yeah.
I think that really our only marker for Logan Sargent is how he compares to Alex Albon, which is not the greatest driver ever. And they're probably going to be racing against Alpha Tauri sitting out there in the back, which is Yuki Tsunoda and what is his name?
DeVries.
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 Who a rookie and a borderline rookie, a rookie and a new guy. And so I think that's Logan's large competition, and we're gonna just kind of have to watch how he does against those. Hopefully, he doesn't wreck the car a whole bunch of times. Like if you can just beat your teammate and not crash the car a whole lot, he's probably the best he can really hope for.
Yep. But as far as like the looks and the livery on the car, I think the Williams car is a nice looking car. Especially
Yeah.
last year was kind of iffy for me, but I love the design of this one. I love the Duracell at the top. I
Yeah.
think it's a cool looking car. And now the one thing I'm sad about is now that Golf is their like main sponsor or one of their main sponsors, is that I don't think we're going to see the Golf liveried McLaren this year. Which
Yeah.
I was one of my favorite like special liveries that they put out, any of the cars put out. So interesting to see what happens with that. But I think it's a good looking car.
It's a good looking car. I agree. Their side pods are not my favorite. They're just not as sculpted as all the other ones. Which is, obviously me being the expert that I am, that's why their car is so slow. But I think it's a really good looking car. I love the blue. I really like the Duracell battery on top as well.
Right.
Haas.
Haas. I want to say they just did a virtual launch, because I tried looking for that one and all I could find is just some like
They're saving
virtual
their pennies.
Yeah, they obviously don't have much.
Yeah.
So,
But good looking
good for
car,
them.
black theme. A whole lot more black than last year. Black side pods, like black engine cover. It's only really got a white nose and halo.
Yeah. And
A little bit of pops of red.
kind of plain, but it's a solid looking car. I mean, it's no frills.
Yeah.
They spent their money elsewhere. I guess they didn't want to pay a graphic designer much.
Yeah.
But hey, it doesn't look bad.
Not bad at all. Overall, like, I'm excited. We only have a couple of cars here that actually did their 23 cars, I believe. Like Alfa Romeo, that one looks great. The McLaren is a 23 car, I think. The Aston Martin is their 23. The Ferrari does have some changes.
Yeah.
It might be their 23 car. I don't think that they had all that much really. I mean, you always have stuff to improve on, obviously, but they had one of the fastest cars out there, so I'm sure they just kind of continued to make small developments, and we'll see how that goes. The floorboards are all different because of the raised edges to help with the porpoising. The Mercedes could be the 23 car. It's definitely not the 22 car. And then we got Alpine, which we haven't covered that one because technically their launch isn't for another hour, but
right. But we've seen the pictures. I mean, as far as, can't get too much into it because we just saw some leaked photos. The paint scheme or the livery looks somewhat decent. They followed suit with everybody else this year. They've done a lot more of the exposed carbon, so you've got a little splash of blue here and there, and then a lot of black on the car. But I'd be interested to see what their actual launch is like, because they, that's one of those brands. Like, I don't know anything about Alpine, like their cars, like their road cars. It's just not something I've ever seen.
Renault's not sold in the U.S., so it's weird when we go abroad to see Renault's driving around. But based on my extensive research on watching Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson's not a fan.
Not a fan? Yeah, I'm looking at some right now. They're just kind of like funky. They look like cockroaches.
Cockroaches. I think that's what they said in Top Gear, was they just kind of made fun how they are classically French. They're just weird. They're different in every way. They're like, you have to just kind of like them for them being weird. And that's kind of how Renault and Alpine is. But, the Renault's been around and in Formula One for a hot minute. They have their own engine manufacturing. They're the only ones that run it. And that Alpine was fast in a straight line last year. So,
oh yeah,
they got something going on over there.
They've been on the come up.
They have been, but between Ocon and Gasly, I think they took a step backwards.
Yeah, we'll see. That's going to be interesting. Like I said before, to see if they how the boys play. If they play nice together this year and work together, or if they end up, having a lot of friction and fighting between the two.
Which that's going to be only hope.
Oh yeah, it's going to be exciting to watch.
So much fun to watch. Yeah, this McLaren looks great. I'm just kind of scrolling through all the pictures again. Like, I love the way the McLaren looks. I really hope that they do well. I think they've got a good shot at it. Ferrari looks fast. And Mercedes looks so good.
Oh my god, yes.
So good. Just
makes
all
me want
black.
Mercedes.
That blue stripe down the side and then the red around the intake. It looks so clean.
And the back wing is also red on the back of it. It's so nice.
It pops.
They did very well.
Yeah. I wonder if there's like with all the cars going to such a darker color, if there's like a advantage to that. I'm trying to think like in the rain and the stuff like, during the daylight, it's got to make the car hotter. Like I'm trying to just wonder if with all of them going to a darker car with more exposed carbon, is it all weight savings? Is there any kind of tactical advantage to it? I don't know.
I mean, that's the general consensus online is that they're just doing it for weight savings now.
Yeah.
But it just looks awesome, so I'll stick with that.
Yeah. Kind of easy. We got all the car launches. Next week we got testing. I can't wait.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm excited for that. So I think next week will be a fun one too for us because we're going to do some 2023 predictions.
Yep.
Also next Friday we've got Drive to Survive coming out, which is I'm super pumped. I saw they just released the final trailer for that earlier today, which it just builds the drama. I cannot wait to see, what happens and like all the behind the scenes,
I guess we're
real
gonna have
or
to watch
fake.
it this year. I've never watched it all the way.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh my God. I when that comes out, I normally finish it within a weekend. It's so good because a lot of it, because you forget the season's so long now.
Yeah.
And like you'd be like, oh, I forgot that happened this year. And then like even the behind the scenes, you kind of got to take with a grain of salt because you never know how much of it is true or how much of it is, contrived or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just such a well done show. Absolutely love that show.
I guess I'll have to watch it this year for the podcast.
There you go. Well, I think that kind of concludes today. That was pretty good. Like we said, next year I'm already getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Next week we'll bust into some 2023 predictions and also, maybe talk a little bit about Drive to Survive and testing. We'll have to get on and talk about that.
Yes.
Super pumped that we got our tickets to Brazil. That's the highlight of my week right now.
Yes, and for a great price.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So if you're going to Brazil, maybe we'll see you there. And on that note, Dylan,
Stay classy, America.
see you next time.